7 p.m. here at Free Body. I'm Kat Matlock, and tonight I'm going to give you the top 5 reasons why you should keep moving after you have an injury. Top 5 reasons why you should move after you have an injury. Now, of course, I don't mean if you have completely fractured your bones and you can't move it and it has to be casted, but I do mean move everything else if you can. But top 5 reasons why you should move. Okay. Here's the first thing. The first thing is fluids. Yes, you want fluids in the area. Yes, you want to have some swelling. It's fine to have some swelling, but you also need to keep those fluids moving. One of the main things that pumps, the main thing, process that pumps lymph through your body is movement. It relies on muscular contraction to move through your body. And riding in on that lymph, that lymphatic fluid, not only your white blood cells, but also fibroblasts. And fibroblasts build tissue. And I mentioned that last week. Fibroblasts build tissue. And so if you aren't moving around the injury, then the lymph can't get in there. It can't repair. And it's going to take so much longer for your body to heal after an injury. You want to keep blood flow moving. You want to keep lymphatic flow moving. And one of the cool things too about that lymphatic flow and that blood flow moving in and out of that injured area with your movement is that it's also taking the dead stuff out. Like, so good, happy, nourishing, healing cells ride in through that movement, and the icky stuff, the stuff that's done, the old cells of inflammation and the dead cells get moved out. So you have to move to do that. Lymphatic flow doesn't happen on its own. It doesn't have a pump. It uses your muscles to pump it through, which is why people who move more, who exercise, tend to be healthier in general, because white blood cells and all that lymph can flow through your body. So I want to pause a minute. I want to say I'm talking about pain-free range of motion, pain-free movement. You just want to find just those edges. So I'm going to finish tonight with talking about more about that pain-free movement, but I want to make it clear that I'm not telling you to go into excruciating pain to keep things moving. You do what you can, listen to your body, but do keep moving. So number 1 reason, fluids, getting the fluids in and out of there. Number 2 is about scar tissue. So scar tissue forms through those fibroblasts. Scar tissue forms just kind of filling in the gaps. So let's say you have a tear in a tendon, or like I have a tear in a retinaculum, a band of connective tissue that's kind of strapping things down in your body. You get a tear like that, your body, without the guidance of your movement, is just going to fill in. Those fibroblasts are just going to fill in everywhere they can. And so the movement helps to keep kind of breaking up that scar tissue from just forming willy-nilly. And it's going to keep the scar tissue forming in lines of motion. So you can see that scar tissue that is just left to its own devices is going to start adhering everything around it. So scar tissue is only formed with collagen. There's no elastin in scar tissue. Our bodies don't build, those fibroblasts don't build elastic fibers. They only build collagenous fibers. And that's the toughest fiber in the body. So great, repair tape, yes, get in there, fill it up. But with your movement that guides the development of the scar tissue, so that at the end of the healing process, you still have the greatest range of motion possible post-injury. So we've got fluids and we've got guiding the scar tissue. We want to guide that scar tissue for the greatest range of movement post-injury. Now, the third top reason of why you should keep moving is that muscles that sit lose tone. And what ends up happening is that they lose tone and they gain tension. So muscles that sit still atrophy, they lose tone, and they gain tension because your body is going to just kind of hang on, trying to have some tone. It's going to create some trigger points actually that are just kind of hanging on, gripping for dear life. Part of the reason why exercise is so helpful and beneficial to your body, of course, the million reasons, right? But one of the reasons is that it helps your muscles to have good tone spread through the tissues instead of just locking down places in contraction. When you sit still or you lay on your back and with your leg up, right, healing, if you're just doing that, the muscles will begin to kind of soften and just begin to atrophy. The longer you sit, the greater the atrophy, right? Losing tone. But what it exchanges that for is tension. And when that tension gets in there, tension is trigger points, and trigger points can cause pain. So what I found the first couple days of my healing from my sprain in my ankle was that a few days laying down on my back with my foot up, doing my pain-free range of motion with my leg elevated, my back was hurting, my hip was hurting. I was like, oh, everything's starting to hurt because I'm just laying here. Get up. So it's not just moving around the area, but moving your whole body, which kind of leads me into the next reason. Reason number 4 is that it keeps your stuff from sticking together. It keeps your muscles and your fascia from getting stuck together. So Gil Headley is totally my anatomy crush, and he's an amazing man. Check him out, Gil Headley. And he gave a talk about that in between the sliding surfaces of our tissues. So let's say one muscle and another muscle laying on top of each other, touching each other. Technically, they're not really touching each other because in between the two of them, there are 3 super thin layers of connective tissue, super thin. And they are what he's now calling perifascia. And that perifascia is a gelatinous, goopy, liquidy connective tissue. It's goopy. And when muscles, when they contract, one of the byproducts of muscular contraction is heat, which is why when you're cold, you shiver, right? Because your body's trying to get you to generate some heat. Heat keeps that gelatinous goo goopy, and it keeps those sliding surfaces sliding on each other. When you're still, the tissues can begin to dehydrate, which makes that space squash in between the muscles. So in between those muscles, that space gets squashed. The fluids it will dehydrate that area, and then those sliding surfaces are no longer sliding and they get stuck together. So it's going to take a lot more time to recover if you are not moving your body and keeping those sliding surfaces hydrated, right? It all comes back to fluids. We need to keep areas hydrated to have the greatest range of motion, the greatest strength, and the greatest healing potential anywhere in our body. And so the last piece, which is kind of a play off that part, is that you want to keep your whole body stronger and moving when you're recovering from an injury so that your ankle thing doesn't become a knee thing and become a back thing and a hip thing. Like I knew I needed to keep my leg elevated the first couple of days and stay off my ankle as much as possible. My pain-free range of motion was elevated up in the air. And I was feeling the repercussions of that by day 3 in my back and my hip when I was trying to get up and start kind of gingerly walking around and starting to use my knee crutch. So what ends up happening is that as you are still, all of your muscles begin to kind of soften and atrophy a little bit over time. They're going to lose more and more tone. Then that's going to create pain from the trigger points and the tension that begins to gather in the muscles. And then the sliding surfaces of the tissues are going to get stuck together and they're not going to move freely. So now your body isn't moving freely. And then the injury starts to kind of spread. Then you have a hip thing and a back thing and now my neck hurts, or I'm getting headaches because I've been like laying in bed like this with my, my chin tucked and my head supported on a pillow, right? So those are my top 5 reasons why I think you should keep moving when you have an injury. So you want fluids. You want to keep fluids pumping through the body. You want to bring fresh blood and fresh lymph. Lymphatic flow is key for any healing process, and that happens with movement, right? Scar tissue, reason number 2, scar tissue forms, and it forms just kind of filling in the gaps. So you want to line that scar tissue up and get it lined up and growing in line with the existing fibers so that you have the greatest range of motion potential after the injury. So lines up those scar tissues with the existing fibers. Muscles that sit lose tone, gain tension. That can lead to pain. You want to keep muscles and fascia from getting stuck together. You want to keep those sliding surfaces in between the tissues actually sliding. And then really you want to keep moving for your whole body so that you don't spread the injury from ankle to knee to hip to back. So those are my top 5 reasons why you should keep moving and keep moving pain-free range of motion. So whatever you can do, pain-free range of motion. And then you just kind of bump up into that edge of pain, kind of back off, bump up to it, back off, bump up to it. And what you'll find is that as you're moving, you're pumping fluids, you're getting a little tone in your muscles, that pain edge is going to get further and further and further away. And so you can actually end up feeling great after an injury instead of feeling like, oh no, now I need to reset my entire body, right? So top 5 reasons, keep moving, keep healing. I appreciate you all so much. Thanks for joining, and I'll see you next week.